Bring my notepad in here. This is not meant for me. Perfect. Candy statues get really, really low.
We are indeed.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds. Tell me when to go when you are ready.
Mr. Decker, I'm ready when you are.
Ready? Good evening, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and call the Pleasant School Board meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting this evening, and if you would, please silence your cell phones. If you would, rise with me. I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So now, Dr.
There's no sound out here.
Sorry? Dr. Penaloza, would you go ahead and announce the translation service, please?
Good evening, I'm Dr. Osceola, and I'm here to provide translation services. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Doctora Osceola Peñalosa y estoy aquí para proveer servicios de traducción.
Thank you. And now, Dr. Pace, I believe you're going to give us a bit of an update on where we're at, which will include some of our doctors and attorney as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Pace.
Okay, good evening, members of the board and members of the community. I have just a little bit of information, but we will start tonight with our guests from Memorial Children's Hospital, the infectious disease specialists who've been a part of our back to school task force since June of 2020, Dr. Kenneth Alexander and Dr. Adriana Cadillo. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Good evening, members of the board and members of the community. I have just a little bit of information to give you before the board has their discussion and moving forward. We have with us tonight Dr. Kenneth Alexander and Dr. Adriana Cadillo, the infectious disease specialists from Nemours Children's Hospital who've been a part of our back to school task force since June of 2020. We have appreciated the expertise and the experience and the local perspective that they bring to this discussion. So Dr. Alexander, Dr. Cadillo, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We thought we'd give you an opportunity to share with us a little bit about what you're seeing and your experience now as you're watching in our local community with the impact on students.
Okay, so Adriana, why don't I go ahead and begin just sharing some information with folks. So I'm going to share a screen with folks. You should now see a slide entitled "What are SARS-CoV-2 variants and why are they important?" Do you see that?
No.
I don't know that we're going to be able to see that from here, but you can go ahead and talk through the information and I'll go work with the team.
Okay, if there's a problem, I can I'll stop sharing and we can talk. So, what are these variants and why are they important? Because obviously these SARS-CoV-2 variants have been all over the news, and this is what's really been driven a lot of the revisiting of the masking issue. So I'll remind you that these SARS-CoV-2, right, COVID-19, is first and foremost a bat virus. So like we've seen in other outbreaks, these are often animal viruses that move into humans. Influenza is the same way. It's a bird virus that adapts itself to life in humans. And so what we're seeing is that the virus is gradually adapting itself to life in people. And so this is why organizations like the World Health Organization have described the virus as the fastest and fittest. The Delta variant is the fastest and fittest virus form that we have now seen of SARS-CoV-2. So it really begs the question, what must a virus do to adapt itself from life in a bat to life in people, and especially in our children? And the thing to remember is that more than anything else, all the virus wants to do is copy itself. Right? It's very simple. It just wants to spread around. How does it do that? To become widespread, coronaviruses adapt themselves by making them more infectious in humans. To make themselves more infectious, they transmit more effectively. And this is why we're seeing higher rates of disease with the Delta variant. It's more successful, it transmits more effectively. We see increased amounts of virus shedding. In other words, when you look at the mucus that children and adults are producing, there's more virus there to spread to other people. It appears that you shed for a longer time. Instead of shedding starting up around day 5, it appears now with the Delta variant, it starts up around day 3, and it seems to be more prolonged. Infection in children. Remember, early in the pandemic, we didn't see a lot of infection in children. It seemed to be restricted to adults, and especially it was severe in older adults. Now this virus has moved into children, which, if you think about it from the perspective of a virus, is a very smart move, right? We all love on our children. Even when they have colds, we give our children kisses. We hug our children. And children are very effective at touching each other. And as a result, children spread infections quite effectively. Incomplete immunity. We've learned that just because you get COVID once doesn't mean you can't get it again. And indeed, this is a common thing in respiratory viruses. Inadequate immunity with vaccination. Again, something we see very commonly with respiratory viruses, and we're certainly seeing it with COVID. Now, we'll talk more about inadequate immunity with the virus vaccines in just a minute. But the thing I want you to remember is that the real purpose of these vaccines is not to prevent infection, it's to attenuate disease. And this is why the vaccines reduce your risk of infection only 14-fold. But if you look at who's hospitalized, 98% of the people that are hospitalized with COVID are unvaccinated people. And so the virus has made a very smart move by infecting children more than the earlier strains that we've seen. The Delta variant does infect children. It may also cause more severe disease in children, but that's less clear. The other thing I want you to pay particular attention to is we're now getting new information about what's happening in schools. And some of you may have seen this report in the report from the CDC, Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, that describes an outbreak of Delta variant disease in a school classroom in Marin County, Florida. And you can see the reference there. I will commend this to all of you. It's worth looking at. But the upshot of it is this. There was a teacher who was one of 2 teachers in the school who elected not to be vaccinated, and who at different times during the day was taking off her mask to read to her students. Now, I understand that, right? Nobody likes wearing a mask. We all want to take a mask on and be with kids, and that's why we're in medicine and in education. The school itself was a small elementary school, 24 staff members. All but 2 staff members were vaccinated, and the school had a masking requirement for its teachers. What happened is that the teacher became symptomatic with COVID-19 on May 19th, but wasn't tested until May 21st. During that time, the teacher read aloud to several of her students out from the front of the room, and then beginning on May 23rd, students became infected. A total of 27 cases were identified and traced back to this teacher on the basis of molecular sequencing. So we know where this virus came from. Among the teacher's 24 students, 22 students were tested, and the attack rate, well, here's the story. If you were sitting in the front row, 80% of those students got infected. If you were sitting in the back rows, the attack rate was lower. But what's concerning is that while the students do well, the students tended to take these infections home. And so that there were parents, grandparents, and other family members getting infected from the students who had been infected from the teacher. So to stem that tide of continued infection, immunization and masking continue to be an important thing of what we can do. Now, unfortunately, there's been lots of writing and people expressing opinions about masking, but in the scientific literature, even those papers that were opposed to masking, where people said masking didn't work, many of those papers have now been retracted by editorial boards or by the authors themselves. In other words, those papers turned out not to hold water. And so there's now a compelling body of evidence suggesting, actually indicating, that masking does work and it's an important part of preventing transmission. In the end, the other thing I want people to keep in mind is I'd like to think that this is the last COVID wave we're going to see. I don't think this is. This is going to be like time at the beach. The waves will come and go, and we're going to see more COVID in the days and weeks to come. And therefore, I remind people that vaccination, masking, I tell some of the families I deal with, only vaccinate the children you love. Right? Vaccination, these are gestures of love. These are things you do for your children. And this is not just my idea. For many of you that have heard his speech, even Pope Francis expressed that immunization was a gesture of love. So this is what we do for the people that we care about. So with that, I'll pass it over to Dr. Khadija, who's done a lot of work with the Orange County schools, Seminole schools, as well as Osceola schools, to share her experiences with the different school districts. Adriana?
Hey, thank you, Ken. And thank you for, again, inviting us to this discussion. As you all know, Ken and I, and really all, the majority of us, physicians, pediatricians, the American Academy of Pediatrics, what we want to do is see schools succeed. And there is a layaway, right? We know a lot of things that do work, so we'd like to help you have some of that information so that we can make schools safe and keep kids attending face to face, which we know they actually benefit from that. And so, as you know, some counties have been able to implement a mandated mask. It has been difficult. Thanks to the ruling last week, I think that we'll be able to see more schools taking that on. I know that this is going to be part of the discussion right now. But what we know, the science shows us that wearing masks universally does work along with the other mitigation efforts. The CDC has clear recommendations. They have all of the references there for you to look at what articles are true. A lot of the articles being cited against mask use have either been retracted or not published peer-reviewed articles or peer-reviewed journals. So please take a look at those just to see where the information is coming from. The number of students that are being infected is increasing. The demand on the hospital systems and in the pediatricians' offices are increasing exponentially. There is the latest report, or actually a letter from the Children's Hospitals Association. All the major children's hospitals have asked for affordable masking and help and vaccination because our hospital systems are being taxed with all of the children that are coming in with not just COVID, because it's true, it's not all COVID that we're seeing in the hospitals, but we are very busy with all things, including COVID, which is preventable, at least hospitalizations and severe disease in those that can take the vaccine. And so we are urging for that. As far as local data, I can offer you a little bit of information as far as what we're seeing locally within our Nemours healthcare system. As far as percent positive tests throughout our county, so we serve Brevard, or we have offices in Brevard, Lake, Orange, Osceola, Polk, and Seminole counties. The week beginning 8/19, so we are getting a weekly report. The week beginning 8/19, 15.9% of all tests that were done, almost 2,000 tests were positive. The week before that, it was 16.8%. And the week before that, right before school started, so the week beginning August 5th, it was almost 20%, 19.9% of all tests were coming back positive. Now, I understand these are different, but just so you know, in primary care, so these are pediatricians seeing patients out in the community, the week of 8/19, 14.4% of all tests came back positive within all of our primary care sites. Again, we have primary care sites among a lot of the counties in Central Florida. The urgent care centers, we saw 15.1% of all tests come back positive that same week. And in our hospital, it was a 19.7% positive number. So out of about 600 tests, 19.7% of patients coming to Nemours Children's Hospital were positive. Looking at Osceola, the week beginning 8/19/21, the percent positive tests were 18.2. So 18.2% of all tests administered for patients from Osceola County in all our locations, primary care, urgent care, and the ED, we were able to pull it by zip codes. It was about 18.2%. The week before that was 21.3. The beginning of August 5th, we had a 26% rate. So, or 26% of all tests done that week were positive. Again, our hospitals are all full. It's not just Nemours. We are in constant communication with all of the Central Florida hospitals that care for children, and we are all full, not necessarily COVID, but we're seeing all kinds of respiratory viruses as well. And so, wearing masks and doing mitigation strategies that we know are effective and were helpful last year should be endorsed and adopted so that we can continue to keep our kids safe, our families safe, and your staff safe. And with that, Dr. Alexander and I will be happy to take questions so that we can answer anything that you actually, if you have any specific questions that we might be able to help you with, that's what we're here for.
Mr. Aguirre, you have a question?
Yeah, Dr. Alexander, before I get started, I was just wondering if love is something that you were taught to measure in medical school.
Mr.
Chairman, please. Let me ask this. Can you give me what the death rate was for Osceola County?
I don't know that offhand. The good news is.
You don't know anything.
Excuse me, Mr. Aguirre, just a minute. Excuse me. I know this is a very emotional issue for everybody. We're going to conduct this meeting tonight in a sane, calm manner. We're going to let the people that are speaking, speak, whether it's you or the board members, Dr. Pace, or the people on the phone. So I am going to ask for decorum, and I am going to ask that we work through this meeting so we can hear everybody's opinion and everybody's viewpoint. Thank you. Mr. Aguirre?
I don't know the death rate offhand. That's a number I can certainly look at.
Thank you, Dr. Alexander. If I may continue, Dr. Alexander.
We are seeing lower death rates because it's happening in younger people. But our hospitals are full. In the case of larger hospitals, there's actually a shortage of beds.
Thank you, Dr. Alexander. I'm wondering if you know what the hospitalization rate is for those percentages in Osceola that you mentioned for people taking the test.
In which age group?
Under 18, if you have it.
In under 18, it would be a fairly low number. We had one fatality in our hospital due to COVID a couple of weeks ago. We've got a few children on ventilators now. The good news is we've not had any kids die since the one about 3-4 weeks ago.
Dr. Alexander, are you allowed to wear a cloth mask in the hospital?
No. The recommendation in the hospital for OSHA is that we're now to wear a medical grade mask in the hospital.
Do you know why they would make that regulation?
That's an interesting question. I think there was some belief that a medical grade mask might be superior in environments with a high rate of exposure to people with COVID.
Dr. Alexander, are surgeons allowed to wear cloth masks when performing surgery?
No, surgeons usually wear a medical mask, either a level 2 or a level 3 mask during surgery, depending on the procedure that's being performed.
Dr. Alexander, thank you. Dr. Cadilla or Dr. Alexander, whomever feels like answering this question. We currently have a higher than 90% compliance rate in wearing masks in school. If we increase that compliance rate, let's say 5%, because it's between numbers that I've heard are 94 to 97%. Can you tell me what the reduction in infection rate would be?
It's probably not linear with the exposure, because again, the few people one person can expose an awful lot of people. So I think it would be hard to calculate that, but at a minimum, it would be proportional to the number of people that are, the increase in masking.
So are you telling me that if we increase our compliance with masks to 99%, that 99% of our students would not get COVID?
No, what it would do is reduce the risk at school.
By 5%, you would say? If we increase by 5%, you said it was relative.
No, yeah, it would probably increase by more than that. We could probably pull up some epidemiologic modeling, but I suspect it would be significantly higher than that. Remember that the reason for masking at school is that when you put on a mask, you're protecting other people. So that the benefit of masking is to prevent transmission. So what would hopefully happen is that we would not only decrease the number of children getting infected, but it would decrease the rate of parents at home getting infected.
Dr. Alexander, can you tell me what the percentage of people who got flu this year is?
The rate of influenza was actually very, very low this season.
Please, I've asked you.
Dr. Alexander, feel free to continue.
So the rate of influenza was quite low this season, which is largely attributed to the use of masking and social distancing.
Okay, and also, you mentioned that our testing rate has gone from 26% to 21% to 18.2%.
Well, that's the rate of positives.
Right.
So, there is some gradual decline of positive rates in the community. In Central Florida, the Florida Hospital Association has reported over the last week a small decline in the number of hospitalizations.
Dr. Alexander, may I ask my question?
Please do.
With that number having gone down from 26 to 21 to 18, without any change in policy regarding masks, can you tell me that if we continue not wearing masks or with the same 94 to 97% compliancy, that it will not continue to go down regardless of any new policies?
I don't have a crystal ball, but what I can tell you is that the number of cases that we have will be lower if people are masking. And if we reduce the total number of cases because we have masking, this will hopefully decrease the number of people in the hospital, the number of people missing work, the number of people dying, and that's, I think, what we're supposed to be doing.
Do you have, Dr. Alexander, any scientific, not just generally speaking, but do you have any scientific research that tells me if we have 5 kids and X amount have masks, what the infection rate will be? In other words, can you tell the parents that are in this room that if we mask every student that we will no longer have COVID, or in the inverse, that if we do nothing, that we will not continue to see a decrease, as you mentioned, from 26 to 18% already?
So what we will see, right, is masking reduces the basic reproduction number of an infection. Let me draw a parallel for you. If you've got a bank account And we start off with an interest rate of 2%. Your money grows at a certain rate. And when we saw the first appearance of COVID-19, the basic reproduction number, which is equivalent to interest rate, was about 2. So that with every cycle, one person infected 2 people, who then infected 4, infected 8, and on it grew. With the Delta variant, we believe that the basic reproduction number is now somewhere between 5 and 8. So what that means is now one person affects 8 people, infects 64 people. So this is a much more infectious virus. So when we put a mask on somebody, we reduce that effective basic reproduction number. So masking can only reduce the risk of transmission. The rest of the world believes this. I don't know why Americans don't, but the rest of the world believes this is true.
Dr. Alexander, you mentioned that it reduces the transmission. Can you tell me by how much?
So estimates are somewhere in the neighborhood of 50%.
So with masks,
Mr. Yates, can they hear me in the vestibule outside?
Yes, sir, they can.
I'm gonna ask you, those that are not in the room with us, if you could please hold it down a little bit so we can hear what is going on in the meeting room. Thank you.
So, to turn it around the other way, would you rather have a bank account that gave you 8% interest or 4% interest?
Dr. Alexander, I can see that you do not have a CPA, but regardless, if we could stick to medicine, if that's okay.
This is an analogy for people.
Dr. Alexander, if I may continue with my question.
Mr. Arnett, you're out of order a little bit. Please do
I'm
not.
sorry, did you wake up at the last meeting? I didn't hear you at all.
Please do not badger our consultant.
I continue with my question.
If you,
That's what I think.
I think it's pretty clear, who runs this meeting? We run this meeting, you let me
You
talk.
pay your pay, you pay your bill.
I have just taken control of the room, please continue.
do we have a right to?
Yes. Let me just say,
Can I just say
We're
something?
public servants, you do as we say.
Absolutely.
Excuse me.
Correct.
We are here to listen to you tonight.
Wonderful.
We're here to have a discussion. We are not here to be yelled at. We're not here to be belittled. We are going to listen to every different viewpoint of the people who have signed in to speak tonight. But I'd like you to give us the respect to listen to the board members ask questions, and listen to the people who are responding. Thank you.
Thank you.
So when our doctors were here, you gave them 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, who the hell are these people? I mean, they're posting fake evidence. I have about 5 or 6 so far.
We're not going to talk, we're not.
That they are lying about. This is misinformation. You
Mr. Ray?
can find it out at childlifeguards.com, childlifeguards.com. We're sick of this.
I'm going to
Our
tell,
children are being abused every day that they're forced to put on the
I'm
mask.
going to give you a warning, sir.
Kids are dying from bacterial pneumonia. Look it up.
Sir, I'm going to give you one more warning. If you scream at us again, I am going to have, ask you to leave the room. Because we're not.
I've said my piece until I get on stand. Thank you.
Mr. Arnett?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to point out that at the last meeting, we spent 4 hours being heckled by the audience, and you did not utter one word about it. You didn't control, there's not a person, sir, I'm speaking, and I am elected, so if I may continue what I'm saying, not the parliamentarian, not the chairman, not the superintendent bothered at all to speak out against people in the audience heckling a board member at that point in time. So this being slightly more important than anyone's job, I think we should have a little bit of patience for the room. Dr. Alexander,
Yes, sir.
you were mentioning a 50% number in terms of the masks reducing. Do you hold to that number, that 50%? If you wear a mask, you're reducing the spread of infection by 50%?
Well, as you can imagine, it's a very hard thing to study, but it's probably in that neighborhood, yes.
I see. Is that a prognosis? Is that how you deliver a prognosis in your practice, by telling people probably?
If you're smart, yes, that's what scientists do. They don't speak in absolutes.
I see. So then you can, however, somehow absolutely tell me that masks are contributing to ending this COVID virus.
Well, masks are part of a collection of things.
Is that an absolute answer, sir?
Distancing, yes.
Okay, so I guess one of us is not smart, as you just mentioned, that's the, how you draw a conclusion, whether someone is smart or not, by speaking in absolutes. Dr. Alexander, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your trip.
My pleasure.
Mr. Aguirre, you done?
I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Alexander and Dr. Kadir. Dr. Pace, would you like to continue with your presentation?
Yes, Chairman Packer and members of the board, I have just a little bit of information to share with you. This board has made safely returning to an in-person instruction a priority within the parameters required by the state. Last school year, we were successful in preventing the spread in schools. We had face masks for students and staff with pretty good compliance. We implemented social distancing where practical and maintained consistency for contact tracing. This year has been a little bit more difficult as the Delta variant is acting very differently than what we had last year. So for the last 3 weeks, we have had 919 students report a positive test, 173 positive staff, and we've quarantined over 5,100 students. As you know, at our last board meeting, the board passed a mandate that would be an opt-out with parents for grades K through 8 because our children in our elementary and K-8 schools are under the age of 12 and they're not eligible for the vaccine at this time. And the CDC has recommended, as Dr. Alexander and Dr. Kadulia, universal indoor masking by all students ages 2 and older. That includes staff, teachers, and visitors, regardless of their vaccination status. Today, as you know, we had the new fast face mask policy that went into effect on August the 23rd to run through October the 4th, requiring face masks for pre-kindergarten through grade 8 students, but allowing parents to opt out in writing. We have about 1,150 opt-out requests so far. There is also obviously the ongoing legislation, which Mr. Kreppenbacher is prepared to provide a brief update on today, as he's had some additional information since last Friday when a judge ruled against Florida's ban on mask mandates in schools. Mr. Kreppenbacher?
Members of the board, everybody's heard about the case on Friday, which was filed. That case did not challenge the Department of Health rule. What was found unconstitutional was the Board of Education's conduct in that matter. The judge orally entered that order, took him about 2 hours. Let me take this off. About 2 hours. The order as of 5 o'clock today has not been signed and entered by the judge. There were things being filed today by the judge. Here's what will happen. When the judge files that order, if the state decides to appeal, the minute they file an appeal, there's an automatic stay of the order. The plaintiff can go to the circuit court judge and ask to lift that stay. That's a heavy burden, I can tell you, to get a judge to lift a stay of their own order. They could also ask the First District Court of Appeals for that. There is also another case filed that you've heard about that there's no result. There's just in briefing stages by the NAACP, and there are multiple districts joining and or individually filing rule challenges to the Department of Health, et cetera, because one of the criticisms of the chair of State Board of Education when they summoned Alachua, Broward, and I think Duval was, you just disobeyed the law, you didn't even file a challenge before you disobeyed it. So I can tell you right now, it is a complete quagmire, but there is a ruling that says it's invalid, the ruling, as of now. Now, all of that said, you're all well aware every district has received letters, the 10 that have so far been involved, from the Commissioner of Education, Corcoran, basically saying there's going to be punishment and here's what will go on. As of right now, it is in a complete state of legal disarray. I don't have anything else to add other than it is a complete state of disarray. Yes,
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Kreppenbacher, as of this moment, there is no order. should an order be made, which is impending at this time, right? We are
There's
expecting
no
an order.
written order.
There's no written order. So, which means there's no order, right? He basically submitted his notes at the point in time before.
He verbally said, here's my order from the bench. He just hasn't issued a written order, which is the predicate to the appeal.
Right. So, and once the order is submitted, there will be a stay in all likelihood. And the likelihood that that stay is removed is very small. Is that correct?
I would say yes.
Okay, thank you. So essentially, for us calling the meeting, just to begin with, previously to the legalities that are taking place outside of the school district, preempted the entire process unnecessarily.
Right.
Number two, we have a policy in place already until October 4th. Now, days later, we're coming back and gonna ask to create another policy. Wouldn't it be prudent, Mr. Attorney, if we just allowed our policy to take hold until at least the judge submits his order?
Yes.
At least until a stay is figured out, so that it doesn't put us in any predicament that's unnecessary?
Let me say this. I have lived by this my whole life. I believe this country was built on laws, and you followed the laws and you challenged them. You didn't disobey them. That's what keeps us from anarchy.
So essentially,
Right now, the law still in effect, technically to that order is signed, is that one that DOE and the Department of Health, that it's optional, which you are in compliance with regard to what you currently have in place.
and even when that order is made, an automatic stay gets put in place, making the law already continue until either a stay is removed or until the governor has his case before the appeals court.
Yes.
Which may in fact go to the Supreme Court.
I would be stunned if it doesn't go to the Supreme Court, given the magnitude of the impact across the state.
I agree. So essentially, this is a political dance here, right? There's no purpose for us to be meeting on this day. There's no reason, there's no valid reason for an emergency meeting to be called to preempt even the case in which we're using to make any new policy. It just not only, I'm sorry, Mr. Krumbacher, here's the thing. There is science, right? Along with science, there's math. The numbers that are being released, okay, are small. Now listen, I'm not speaking as somebody who believes that COVID doesn't exist. I do. I do not believe it's a hoax. It's nothing like that. But when the percentages involves decimal points and zeros, and now instead of focusing on the education, instead of focusing on what our mission is, we're here discussing a political issue, which this has become, is a shame. We are not doing the best job serving the children of these people here, right now, especially at least, right? And I think that we should be refocusing on the mission of the school district. This is not the county, this is not the city, this is not the state, this is a school district, and we are not serving the students of this county, we're not serving the families that we should be, and it's a shame that we come here to pull a political stunt with no purpose, no rhyme, other than come in here and discuss something that in 2 days, maybe we have to call into another emergency meeting. This is, aside from that, we have issues that are coming out regarding the policy that we instituted recently in terms of how the teachers are addressing it, how the school district is addressing it, how the school district is taking names of the students who are in compliance or not in compliance, how everyone involved is doing something else. So,
Mr. Yates, the people in the back, if you could please, and outside in the vestibule, we cannot hear in here with the conversation. If you could please hold down, thank you, go ahead, Tom, I'm sorry.
this is a waste of time. If those doctors cannot wear masks in their work, then it does not make our kids any safer. That's pretty clear to me. That's a common sense thing. I don't have a doctorate degree in anything. However, I will say that certainly, if I was gonna risk my life and go into a room with somebody who had a communicable disease that was gonna kill me, I wouldn't go in with a cloth mask. We are failing the people of this county,
Yes.
not by making medical decisions on behalf of the parents, but by failing to do the job that we were elected to do, which is to provide a high-quality education to the 60,000 students of this county. It is not our business to act like doctors or to come in here and do a political show which tells these people that we're protecting your kids with something that offers no protection. The fact is, you do not bring a knife to a gunfight, and that's what these cloth masks are. They are a waste. In fact, if we're gonna have some kind of policy, then along with that policy, we better be providing all of our kids with an N95 mask, which is the only way that we're gonna prevent them from spreading that disease. So I hope that they go hand in hand with one another, because otherwise, this is nothing but a sham. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Pace, are you done? Okay, we are gonna enter into our public comment portion. I have a request to speak. If you wish to speak and have not filled one of these out and passed it to Ms. Culver, please do so, because this is what we work from. I do want to say before we start this, I'm going to ask, I know there's certainly two opinions in this room. I'm going to ask that you respect the person speaking, whether that person agrees with you or is in disagreement. Allow them to speak, allow us to hear their comments, and let's treat them with respect as we would all expect to be treated. So with that, there's no order. I'm sending these through in the order that they were handed to me. It's not like fors and against or anything like that. So what I am going to do, because there are quite a few of these, which is fine, and we want to hear everybody, I'm going to call the first person up to speak. I'm going to call the next person on the list, so if they're outside or somewhere, they can kind of begin to the room. I am going to ask that you give your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. There will be a timer on these monitors. I'm going to ask also that you respect the 3 minutes. It gives everybody a chance to speak. It allows the time that we all have here to be well spent. And with that, I'm going to call the first person up to speak, which is Mr. Jeff Weiss. And following that person will be Debbie Mann. So, Mr. Weiss, again, name and address for the record, and 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Jeff Weiss, I live at 3221 Falcon Point Drive in Kissimmee. This is my second time before the school board, so thank you, Dr. Pace and board members, for your time this evening. It's interesting, right? Last time I was...
Ruben, can you turn the speaker up, just the microphone up just there? Go ahead and try again if you, I'm sorry, Mr.
Is that any better? Can you guys hear me now?
Can y'all in the back hear him when he just?
No.
Yeah, you can hear it better then. I can hear it now.
Test, test, test.
I think it's louder outside than it is in here. Go ahead.
So last week I had the opportunity to speak before the school board, but prior to the mask mandate, and I spoke for a few minutes about my son Julian, who's 6 years old, and talked about his first day at school. Talked about his concerns, really talked about his experience. I'm not going to do that today. His experience is his experience. We have students all over the county that are experiencing their own first days, first weeks, first everything. What I would say is that by the time this meeting is over, 242 Floridians will have lost their lives to COVID. That's the daily death rate released by the Florida Department of Health. 242. Those are parents, brothers, sisters who won't be home this year for Thanksgiving, won't go home from the hospital. 242. That's today, that's yesterday, that's the day before. That is the average in the state of Florida. To continue on, currently, over 20,000 students across the entire state of Florida under the age of 12, according to the Department of Health, have tested positive for COVID. Then there was, of course, celebration, right? It's interesting as we go through. This is a political statement for some. For others, it's not. It's a political hot potato, as our attorney has stated on several occasions. The primary job of the school board at this point, in my opinion, is safety first and education second. If you cannot provide a safe environment for my son to learn in, I'm not sure that he has an opportunity and we can hold him accountable for the education that he is supposed to receive. We talk about policies. Well, policy without teeth is really just a suggestion. So without the ability to enforce a mask mandate, not sure it really does much good to anybody at this point in time. One of the school board members actually suggested we should provide N95 masks to all students. I absolutely agree with that. We should require students and staff members to require a mask at any point in time when they are on school facility or dealing with our students. Currently, we have dress code, which we enforce. We also have a certain amount of pre-registration process that our students have to go to before they are allowed in class. One of those happens to be a vaccine requirement. Diphtheria, tetanus, measles, mumps, rubella. If one individual walked into a room and they were contagious with measles, we would do everything we could to protect every other student in that room from that contagion. I'm asking the school board to do the exact same thing at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Debbie Mann?
Hi, my name is Debbie Mann. I'm at 1180 Sun Grove Lane, St. Cloud, Florida.
Just sent Debbie in first. And Laura McAdams, if you could get ready, please.
Okay, so first off, I want to start off with some facts. One fact that I didn't have on my paper that the doctor said is that our percentages of infection and positive tests are going down every week since school started. The other statistic I didn't have was that if we have 919 students tested positive and we have 60,000 students, that's 0.015%. The CDC study analyzed 90,000 elementary school students in 169 schools in Georgia, found no significant difference in the schools that required masks compared to those that did not. Dr. Macri of Johns Hopkins Hospital studied 48,000 children under the age of 18, found that the mortality rate among children is 0 without a pre-existing condition such as leukemia. Students have a greater risk of dying on the way to school than they do of dying of COVID. According to the CDC's mortality and morbidity report that was updated weekly, children aged 5 to 14, 0.2% chance of dying of COVID, 0.7 chance of dying by homicide, 1.5 of dying by suicide. That's our real pandemic right there that we need to be looking out for. 0.3 from the flu or pneumonia. So the risk of death is greater from the flu, yet we have never masked or quarantined the first couple months of school when we have pink eye, strep, flu, pneumonia, hand, foot, and mouth, and everything else. Matter of fact, the risk of death by COVID, and this is according to the CDC's report, is equal to the risk of suffocation. We know, though, that masks have a serious toll on mental health. Makes students harder to understand, makes it harder for them to understand what's being said to them. It hinders their ability to empathize with their peers. I mean, God gave us a face for a reason. There's a direct link between children being able to empathize with their peers and their parents and their mental health. From the summer of 2019 to the summer of 2020, there was a 22.3% spike in ER visits from potential suicide for young adults. So why, knowing all this, are we masking children at school? Because I don't think it's to protect the kids. I think it's because we have people at home afraid of catching it from the kids. And if we're going to place that burden on the students, then shame on you. The people at home, they've got tools at their disposal. They can get the shot if they want to, or, here's a novel idea, work on boosting their immunity. Or better yet, if they're scared that they're going to get something from their kid, they can mask their kid at home. When the kid gets home from school, slap a mask on them if they're that afraid of their child. The majority of students that I know that are quarantined because an adult at home has it, or an adult at home gave it to them, not because they're catching it at school. So we need to leave the students alone. This decision that you're making needs to be made using our heads and not our emotions. It needs to be based on facts and not opinions. And it needs to be made remembering that we live in America, and a school board does not need to overreach and infringe on the rights of parents to raise kids the way they see fit. Thank you.
Next up will be Laura McAdams, followed by, I think it's Jason Baker.
I printed these out for you guys to pass out of data and facts, numbers that I pulled myself off the CDC websites. 385 deaths as of age 25 of COVID in children between 0 and 17. My name is Laura McAdams. My address is 1847 Overcup Avenue in St. Cloud, Florida. I'm here today to speak out against mask mandates. As you will see in the data that I've provided, numbers and facts say it all. There's probably more deaths of cancer patients and children, leukemia, that sort of nature going on, and nobody's putting those things out. So I pulled this also from a reliable website. I'm going to read it straight from the paper. You know, the doctor didn't even have any clue about this and stated something that was just totally false and misinformation. So many of American peer nations around the world, including the UK, Ireland, all of Scandinavia, France, and the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Italy, have exempted kids with varying age cutoffs from wearing masks in classrooms. Conspicuously, there's no evidence of more breakouts in schools in those countries relative to schools in the US, where the solid majority of kids wore masks for the entire academic year of 2020, and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. These countries, along with the World Health Organization, whose child masking guidance differs substantially from the CDC recommendations, have explicitly recognized that the decision to mask students carries with it potential academic and social harms for children and may lack a clear benefit. To date, the highly transmittable Delta variant has not led them to change their calculus. Many experts spoke with me and told the Delta variant represents a major and concerning new development in COVID pandemic. It probably shouldn't change our thinking on a mask requirement for schools. That comes from all those countries that are not the US. For some reason, the US wants to do everything the opposite of everybody else. But another thing that's also kind of common sense, you know, they wore masks all year in 2020. Doesn't that suppress the immune system and doesn't allow them to breathe in oxygen and nutrients and things that are also traveling in the air that can help build their immune system? You know, that might be causing a lot of the sickness and illness that's going around this year. It's kind of like an infant that goes into a brand new daycare, never been sick, right, at the age of 2, and then all of a sudden they're coming home with RSV, coming home with the cold, running nose constantly. Why? Because they're missing vitamins, because they're not around other children. They're stuck at home all day with us only and being outside. So guess what? They're going into school, contracting different illnesses, getting sick all the time. I mean, it's just common sense. I don't have to be a doctor with a doctorate's degree to know that. So my finishing speech right now is also something else. It's a historical piece. It's 2,300 years ago, long before Islam. Arabs discovered that forcing people to cover their nose and mouths broke both will and individuality, and therefore depersonalized them. It made them submissive. That's why they imposed on every woman a mandatory use of a fabric over her face. Then Islam turned it into a woman's symbol of submission to Allah, the king and the man of the harem. Modern psychology explains it. Without a face, we do not exist. And as independent beings, I'm almost done, the child looks in the mirror between the ages of 2 and 3 and discovers himself or herself as an independent being. The mask is the beginning of deleting individuality. He who knows not his history is condemned to repeat it. Industrial militia.
Next up, I believe it's Jason Baker. From Harmony, Florida. No, it is. Okay, I'm sorry. Is it Baker?
Yes, sir, it is.
And Tamika Lyles, you'll be next on deck here.
Good evening.
Baker, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Jason Baker, 7157 Oakland Trail. I don't know what else to add to what has already been described as oversight by the board. And I appreciate you, John Aguero, for your comments. You know, the one thing that we have to focus on is we don't want to have our kids wearing muzzles all day long. I've listened to your arguments, and I've noticed that they're missing a few things. And namely, that's evidence, data, and science, common sense, but most of all, basic human decency. COVID poses almost no risk to our kids at all. 4.2 million children have tested positive for COVID, a total of 0.008%, with 334 of them dying. It's certainly confirmed also by our guest, Dr. Alexander. 480 kids died of the flu in the 2018-2019 season. That's more than have died from COVID in a year and a half. Now, did anyone on this board ever suggest masks, whether they be the cloth ones that you distributed freely amongst the students, or the N95 masks during that heavy flu season? I don't think that you did. So which is more dangerous, COVID or the flu? It's child abuse, pure and simple. What's happening now to Munchausen by proxy, which is a mental health illness that occurs when someone makes up medical illnesses in a person under their care? What if a parent forced his kid to wear a football helmet all day, every day, for fear of falling coconuts and meteors? If you saw that, you would say he's abusive. The same holds true here. Considering the psychological damage that we are doing to our children by teaching them that the air is toxic, that everyone around them is sick. Hence the reason why the lady over here who discussed the suicide rate increase. Will we be complicit in increased suicide? The psychological impact that it has upon our children. And I ask you, the board, if you accept that liability. I feel as though sometimes you make it to feel better about yourselves and to protect yourselves politically. The child's mask is a symbolic security blanket for you, not them. And that's been proven through data. The sole reason for the militant push to wear masks is to provide only visible indication that there was some kind of event happening. Without people wearing masks everywhere they went, there would have been absolutely zero indication that there was even an alleged virus to begin with. The mask was just a psychological reinforcement tool, a prop, and it served no other function. And that has been confirmed by the doctor that was on the phone. I also wanted to present, and if you're interested in data.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
I'm sorry, you're 3 minutes up if you.
Thank you very much.
Please wrap.
But I do have data to support that the NIH did come out with that supports the masks and why school districts are doing what they're doing. But I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next up is Tamika Lyles, which will be followed by Lynn Cousins. Ms. Lyles, you know the drill. 3 minutes, please.
Good evening.
Floor is yours.
Good evening, board. I want to say that we can disagree and agree on many different things as it comes to these masks. Okay, some may believe that it's political, what have you. But I want to give some insight tonight. I want to first say thank you to the doctors who came in and gave their numbers. There has been over $1 billion that has been spent on COVID research. And though I appreciate all of these different opinions about what's good for everybody's child, unless someone in here has spent over $1 billion, I don't want to hear anybody give an opinion about what the CDC is saying. They're very clear. They're very clear. Very clear. The government pays them in order to do their research and give their opinion. Public schools are funded by the government. If, in fact, and taxpayers,
Just a minute.
and we all have a say in that. We all want our children safe. We do. Every last one of us. And even though we disagree on where we stand on this issue with masks, we agree that we all want our children safe. And me personally, I would rather for you to make a decision that will keep all of these children safe, these teachers and staff safe, rather than base your opinion upon your opinion. Leave that to the professionals who get paid to make these decisions and give them to you. Secondly, while we're here, and I know that masks are the heated topic, but I do want to bring to your attention that we also have hundreds of students that are sitting on a waiting list. You're right, Mr. Arguello. Your job is to ensure that these children are learning in a safe learning environment. Well, we have over 175 sitting on a waiting list because their parents don't want to send them to school, and there is no option. There is no option for those students. OVS is completely full. Florida Virtual Schools is completely full. All of the digital other options, K-12, completely full. So those students are sitting here now over 3 weeks out of school. So board, I ask you to please implement a digital option and give parents the option to send their children to face-to-face learning or to keep them home and let them still learn adequately with a teacher who is going to give them instruction every day. Because all children deserve to have it. All children deserve to have it. Thank you.
Next up is Lynn Cousins. Will be followed by Mark Peters. You'll be ready. Ms. Cousins, give your name and address for the record, please, and 3 minutes.
My name is Lynn Cousins. I live at 12 Plymouth Place. I have 4 kids that attend public school, and I would like to play for you.
Ms. Cousins, if you could speak just a little louder, I don't think they can hear you in the back.
Oh, they can't hear me? Okay, so I have 4 kids in public school, and I would like to play for you what children in our neighborhood feel about what's going on right now.
You have about 20 seconds.
And that's done.
Sir,
Thank you.
sir, when you get your turn to speak, I hope nobody heckles you. I've asked you, I've warned you. Can you please give everybody the respect that you would deserve and expect?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Peters?
Well, before my time starts, let me prepare my workstation.
Jason, while he's cleaning, Jason Batson will be on deck and up next.
I'll leave this here if anyone else needs it. My name is Mark Peters. I'm at 4315 Beale Court, Kissimmee, 34746. Now, the reason I demonstrated cleaning my workstation, everyone who came up here, either if they wore a mask, they still were touching the surface. They were still doing everything, spitting all of this mic like I am doing right now. You guys, when you spoke, even Dr. Pace, some of you, took off your mask, like the attorney, and spoke. We just heard that the doctor said someone infected an entire class just by removing her mask to read. So you guys just did what they're saying not to do. Now, if you wanna, last views a few weeks ago, or not very long actually, 23rd, it was brought up by a board member to implement the mask mandate with an option, but yet decided that high school did not need it, like all our high schoolers are vaccinated. And we know that high schoolers are susceptible to this virus as anyone else. But yet we made following in the steps of our big brother, Orange County. Seems like we can't make up our mind on our own unless we go what they say. So they made a mandate today, so let's do it too. And that's what we do, we follow in their steps. Why can't we chart our own course? Let me just read what the CDC says here, and Dr. Pace actually put it on the screen before. Due to the circulating and highly contagious Delta variant, CDC recommends. I know you guys are board members and this is a school board, so words, very important. Whenever children take tests, how a sentence is structured, the particular words play a role in how that answer is given. So the word recommends, let me just briefly state what recommends mean. Recommend, dictionary definition, to represent or urge as advisable, to advise as an alternative, to suggest. But you guys want to take a recommendation and make it a mandate. Let me just tell you what mandate means. It has nothing to do with recommend. It says to authorize or decree as the enactment of law, to order or require. So you're changing what the CDC, as someone just stated, the CDC spent $1 billion to make a recommendation. Now let me just say one thing. The CDC also passed a law recently that got actually pulled back because they didn't have a place to pass law, but they ordered the entire nation to not evict tenants who are not paying rent. They ordered because they wanted to protect people. If they wanted to protect us and they say mask is important, wouldn't they order mask as well? But they didn't do that. They recommended because they don't have evidence to back up that mask. By the way, let me just display what mask is. You all are wearing masks, most of you, that are cloth, made by someone that Target sells this. This one here we order online. It comes in different amounts in a box. We pay an average of 50 cents.
Mr. Peters, your time is up if you could wrap it up.
So I just want to let you know that your mandate is not flying.
Thank you.
Could I just, for the record, there is no current proposed action by this board. No, but he said you're proposing, there is no proposed action as of this time.
Then why call the meeting?
I think it was
So
a
we can have a
matter
discussion,
of significant.
have the people here have the discussion. Next up is Jason Batson. Jason, are you here? Next up will be Jim Williams. Be ready, please. Mr. Batson, if you would, name and address for the record.
My name is Jason Batson.
3 minutes, please.
I live in St. Cloud, Florida. I just want to speak as a father, as a single father. I'm a paying member of society. I contribute to society. I'm also a good dad. It is my choice, what is best for my daughter. I don't care what anybody says, down from the top all the way down to the bottom. My choice is what's going on with my daughter. You guys don't get that choice, and nobody is allowed to tell me what my daughter's going to wear at the school. I accepted the fact that we were supposed to wear uniforms. that was fine, because everybody looks respectful, I agree with it, but this is too far. You can say what you wanna say to the country and to adults, but when you start going after the kids and using that to push your agendas, now I have a problem with that. And I wanna remind you where you get your paychecks from. The last time I checked, y'all worked for me. And I want y'all to do what I say to do, not the other way around. And for the record, when condoms and birth control are 100% effective, then I'll start wearing a mask.
Jim Williams. Following Mr. Williams will be Hidionis Morales. Williams, name and address for the record, please, sir, and 3 minutes.
Jim Williams, 2495 Long Pine Lane, St. Cloud, Florida. Thank you very much. Good evening, school board and fellow citizens. Point 1, masks have not and do not protect against COVID. In an interview at 60 Minutes on March 8, 2020, Dr. Fauci said, quote, "There is no reason to be walking around with a mask." In the interview, he pointed out, quote, "Wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better. It might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is." Then he named 4 reasons masks are ineffective against COVID. 1, people keep fiddling with the mask. They keep touching their face. 2, people generally use masks that do not seal around the face and are loose-fitting. 3, people do not wear masks properly or consistently. They keep moving the mask up and down and taking it off and on. 4, masks are often worn, put aside, and then reused. These 4 reasons are still true. Point 2, we are now in the lowest point of mortality in the U.S. since the pandemic began. The CDC on August 7th reports that deaths are at the lowest weekly point since March of 2020, 1,170. You didn't know that, did you? Probably because of the media hype about growing case numbers, overcrowded hospitals, and the raging Delta variant. You probably thought the mortality rate was through the roof. It is not. Point 3, the death of any child is horrific, but kids dying from COVID in Florida is below flu levels. 22 children died in Florida in 2020 from flu. Pediatric deaths from COVID in 2020 and 2021 combined, 15. COVID is the least likely cause of death for kids in the U.S. There is a far greater likelihood that a child will die from a vehicle accident or from a homicide or drowning than will die from COVID. Point 4, a large-scale study published by the CDC found that no statistically significant difference in schools that required students to wear masks compared to schools where masks were optional. Considering these facts, first, you should not be mandating masks for children at all, especially with no parental option to choose. Second, stop perpetuating this evil spirit of fear and anxiety that's swallowing our children.
Your time is up.
I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Morales, I'm assuming, and followed by Karen Baker.
Good afternoon, my name is Osceola. My address is 4555 West Lilo Bronson. I am here today because this has been made a political issue. As we can see in this room, all the people that are not wearing masks, we all have signs that say, "Do not mask our children," and the people that are wearing masks made it political. Your eyes can see it behind me. With that said, it is your responsibility to follow the science. Science, common sense says. The boxes say it. this does not prevent from COVID. So why are we wearing masks that say in the boxes, they do not prevent from COVID? Have you seen a petri dish, if we're gonna go to science, 20 minutes after you wear a mask, rub a Q-tip, put it under the microscope, the amount of bacteria that is accumulated, it is child abuse. To pretend to have our children 8 to 10 hours during school with masks, breathing, not only carbon dioxide, their own bacteria from their noses, their own bacteria from their mouths. Carbon dioxide kills neurons. And how do we expect them to learn? How do we expect them to function when we have people that bring recordings of children saying how afraid they are of the mask? That is the spirit of fear. We are instilling fear. And that is part of the education too. If we keep supporting this mask mandate that goes against the governor's executive order, you will be failing the system. Not only that, Florida is one of the few states in the nation that has the Parental Bill of Rights. Have you read it? Most parents don't know that there is a bill, that Florida is one of the few states in the nation that has one. We've had it for 4 years. That bill gives the right to parents to decide medical issues for the children, educational issues for the children, behavioral issues for the children. So why are we here today? Just because Orange County did what they did? We have a very strong community in Osceola County. We support our small business. We know each other. Osceola County is different to so many parts of Florida. So please, I'm here just to call your attention. Let's not get pressured by what everybody else is doing. Osceola County is special, very special. We are a very strong community. Let's keep practicing being community. You guys do what you are paid to do by us. Most of you are very well loved in the community. Please use your heads, use common sense, follow science, and do not let the elite and the pressure, political pressure, make you take some decisions that might cost you your seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a speech. As my son says, my body, my choice. The children that attend schools should have a choice to wear a mask if they want. We should have freedom of choice to wear a mask if we would like. And more children are dying of the flu than COVID. Like the child that was speaking on the phone, she can wear a mask if she wants, but not all children should have to wear one. We should be able to have the freedom of choice.
Thank you for next up is Karen Baker, followed by Rita Hams. Ms. Baker? Yeah, before.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Baker. I live at 2484 Yellow Brick Road in St. Cloud. I am a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. I am not a medical doctor, and I don't believe any of you are. But I do know how to do research. Enough is enough. Take the masks off the children. Just because a person has a PhD or MD behind their name does not mean they have common sense. This board flips and flops more than a fish out of water or Fauci and the CDC. You are confusing our children. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, and back to wear a mask, or a parent can opt their child out. The children are learning that they can't trust adults. Current mask policy states that will be in effect until October 4th. I refer to the following doctors. Jeffrey Barkey, MD. Masking children is about power and control, not science. Children are harmed, often severely, from the masks. Children are not harmed by COVID. Doctors are seeing an increased level of anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, learning disorders, and other health problems. A group of moms in Florida took the mask off their children after a few hours and sent them to a local lab for testing, and all kinds of pathogenic disease organisms were found in their masks. The forced mandates of masking children is child abuse. Follow the science. Masks are not working and vaccines are failing. Children are getting sick because they are living in a petri dish with the masks. The CDC has turned into a political organization, not a science organization. Dr. Daniel Stark states that coronaviruses and respiratory viruses are spread by aerosol particles that are small enough to go through every mask. No one can make this virus go away because you are trying to do something that has been tried and can't be done. The best treatment is natural immunity. Since the recovery rate for healthy children under 18 is 99.998%. We have a wonderful immune system created by God. Let it work. Dr. Vladimir Zelenko states that no child should be vaccinated unless you believe in child sacrifice. Dr. Robert Malone, who created the messenger mRNA vaccine, has said that no one should take the jabs under any circumstances whatsoever. Thomas Jefferson said 240 years ago that there is no justification for taking away an individual's freedom in the guise of public safety. Wearing a mask should be a choice, not a mandate. Fear is a liar.
Next up would be Rita Hams, followed by Darby Bronson.
Good evening, board. My name is Rita Harris. My penmanship is not great, so I'll give you that one. So I'm here today to ask the board to please consider putting in a mask mandate with only a medical opt-out. The reason I'm asking this is because the JAMA, J-A-M-A, released a study stating that schools that required a mask with only a medical opt-out had 37% less transmission of COVID-19. Now, I know a lot of people behind me want to use hyperbole, and they want to use anger, and they want to use emotion, but it really is not child abuse to ask a child to wear a mask any more than it is to ask a child to put on a helmet or to put them in a car seat. It is keeping them safe. As a matter of fact, today my daughter got into a car accident. She was rear-ended, and thank goodness she had a seatbelt on. That's not tyranny. It's called protection, all right? Second of all, everyone likes to make the point, and they're right, that these masks that we buy from the store, they don't protect against COVID, which is why it is important that the collective wear the mask. When everybody wears a mask, we are all protecting each other. When you go into surgery, the surgeon is wearing a mask. He's not wearing a mask to protect himself from you. He's wearing it to protect you from him. If we're all wearing a mask, then we are all engaging in protecting each other. And that brings me to my last point. This is a public school, all right? You guys mandate dress code. You say that bandanas are not required. You say that certain t-shirts with certain words are not required. And the parents agree to that. And they send them to a public school and they agree to that. If they want their children to wear masks or not wear masks, they can do that at home. They can let their children go to Publix or Walmart or wherever without a mask on. That is their choice. But when they are on public school property, they should be mandated, at least for a time period, to get through this surge that we are in. They should be mandated to wear masks with only a doctor opt-out. Someone said that, oh, it really only affects a child with leukemia. What a horrible thing to say to our society, that the least of us, who are most vulnerable, are worth the less. That is what that says.
Please, let her speak.
And yes, please, let me speak. You all spoke. And also, if you want to do a science experiment, putting a Q-tip is not going to work. You need to use agar to get it to grow. That's right. So, thank you. Science.
Next up, is it Darby?
Yes, sir.
Darby, I'm sorry, I wouldn't. Just one second, then followed by Darby will be Lori Pate. Darby, 3 minutes, give us your name and address for the record, and you have the floor, sir.
I'm Darby Bronson, 940 Spring Park Street, Celebration, Florida. I'd like to start off with a quote. I'm all in favor.
Mr. Bronson, hold on, I'm gonna give you the time. I wanna wait, can somebody pull that door too in the back, please, so we can hear? I'll give you the time at the end.
You're good.
Okay, sorry.
All right. I'm all in favor of the democratic principle that one idiot as good as one genius. But I draw the line when someone takes it to the next step and concludes that 2 idiots are better than 1 genius. I really didn't want to make this political, but I want to remind John that the reason why you were elected is because Victor Cruz dropped out. I just wanted to let everybody know that.
No, just stick with it.
Yep, I got you. I'm sick of wearing masks. I'm sick of having to quarantine my kids. My kids were quarantined 7 times last year. I'm sick of having to miss school because the school gets closed or there's an outbreak at school. Most of all, I'm sick of the district not following basic safety guidelines to protect students and staff of COVID. Stop cherry picking the research you choose to follow like you did. You just threw out numbers. Like, I don't even know where you got your numbers from. You can't do that.
Just.
Okay. You can't cherry pick it to fit your own personal agenda, right? Ron DeSantis, why are you so afraid of him?
You're gonna need to address the whole board, not an individual.
The board, why are you so afraid of him? When's the last time that Ron DeSantis spent any time at Osceola County School? Damn it. The time for playing politics is over. The time for following basic guidelines and recommendations by the CDC is now. All children and staff and volunteers at anyone who steps on school should need to wear a mask, regardless of vaccination status. I ask the board to vote yes for all mandatory masks for all schools in Osceola County, not just K through 8. I ask the board to vote yes on not giving the parents the option to opt out. I also ask the board to provide Osceola virtual again. Hire more teachers. If you're not going to give us protection that we need, give us the option so we can put our kids in these classes. My kids did it half the year last year. It worked. Give us it back. That's all we're asking.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Next up, Lori Pate, to be followed by Mandy Schaefer. Ms. Pate, give us your name and address for the record, please, and 3 minutes. You know the drill.
My name is Lori Pate, 5025 Haywood Griffin Road, St. Cloud. I'm a teacher at Harmony High School, and I've taught in Osceola County for 34 years. I'm here to express my concern as a teacher, a parent, a grandparent, that you all are regarding the mask mandate for everyone. Last year was the most challenging year of my 34-year career. Contrary to what you might think, it was not due to the change in presentation of curriculum, going digital, adding academics. It was due to the lack of relationships created between teachers and their students and their peers. Masking students is a psychological stressor for children. Covering the lower half of the face of both teacher and student reduces the ability to communicate effectively. Positive emotions such as laughing and smiling become less recognizable, and negative emotions become more amplified. In addition, there is no proof or scientific evidence that masks work. Instead, we are allowing another year of diminished education, and we're sacrificing our children's social and emotional well-being so that some adults and elected officials can feel marginally safer. What a shame. Shame on every one of you. In closing, I ask our board members to, at the very least, keep masks optional. This allows those who feel it best to mask up their children to continue to be able to do so, while allowing those who feel it is detrimental to their child's best interest to have the right to be mask-free. And Mr. Osceola, thank you for getting it. And if you need a campaign manager when you're up for re-election, I'm your girl.
Next up will be Mandy Schaefer, followed by Anthony Nieves. Ms. Schaefer, name and address, please, and 3 minutes.
Mandy Schaefer, 703 Missouri Avenue, St. Cloud, Florida. Am I not very loud?
Nope, okay.
Hi, I would first like to define a word for all of you. The word is autonomy. Autonomy means self-government, ruling or managing oneself, independence. The word has lost its meaning as the debate of whether to mask our children or not mask our children continues. I'm not here to claim I'm an expert in science because I'm not, but what I'm an expert in is my own child. Over the last year, we've continued the debate, and I've witnessed more and more autonomy of parents to make the best decisions for their own children to be taken away. When I gave birth to my son 14 years ago, my husband and I were given the freedom to name our son as he grew. We had the freedom to care for our son, mold our son, to educate him freely the way we saw fit as a family. The same goes for all the parents in this room. They all had the freedom to choose for their children what was best. I'm for choice, choosing what is best for our family, how we teach our children to exercise that freedom of choice when you as a school board want to make it for them instead of letting the parents be the ultimate authority. What are we teaching our kids when we take the authority from the parent deciding what is best for the child and placing it in the hands of all 5 of you that want to make that decision? Do you know my child's name? You know his birthday? Do you know what his favorite color is? Do you know what he's allergic to? Do you know anything about him? Who comforts my child when he's hurt or advises him when he has a problem? Is it you 5 school board members? No, it's myself and my husband. You don't know my child or the thousands of other children in the school district like you know your own. If you 5 mandate masks for all children without recognizing the parental freedom to choose, you undermine the parents' authority in the eyes of our children. Do you 5 school board members want to have all the kids from the school district answer to you instead of the parents who they've been blessed with by God, their creator? You're taking the parents' ability to govern their children as they see fit when you place every child in the same box, the box being that all children in Osceola County have to wear masks. I implore of all of you to allow the choice to remain in the parents' hands. If a parent thinks it's the best practice for their child to wear a mask, then you should support it. If the parents think it's the best choice for the parent or the child to not wear a mask, then you should support that. I don't envy your positions and know that I pray for every one of you each week. However, you were elected and chosen to represent your constituents, not rule over them. You all took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and of Florida. The 5 of you cannot care for the health of my child better than my husband or myself. So please do not take on that role. Let's do our job as parents. Let us do our job as parents, along with the thousands of other families in Osceola County.
Next up, Anthony Nieves, followed by Tammy Fitzgibbon. Ms. Nieves, 3 minutes, and give us your name.
My name is Anthony. Good evening, members of the school board. My name is Anthony Nieves. I'm an Osceola resident. My address is protected by law. Judith Howman, James Lebrecht, Denise Jacobson, Stephen Hoffman, Bob Muller, Neil Jacobson, Michael Tottenbaum, Rosie, Nancy Rosenblum, Nancy D'Angelo. These are the names of some of our most iconic disability rights advocates in American history. Many have since passed, but a few remain still championing the cause for equality. With a pandemic that is ravaging Central Florida, we have felt this grave impact with the continued loss of life in our schools. Teachers, coaches, parents, military veterans, and scores of law enforcement personnel have succumbed to COVID-19. And while this pandemic continues to ravage us, where was our governor? Anyone? In New Jersey. He was in New Jersey with mega donors while families of all colors of the rainbow were burying their dead in Florida. I stand before you urging you to join the counties that have shown the cojones, the bravery to stand up to the children and for the children and families of Florida, especially right here in Osceola County. Stand up for all disabled children and adults who continue to be left in the gutters of our educational institution with little to no options in comparison to their able-bodied peers. Provide the access points that we needed for those children to meet up with their classmates on an even playing field. Digital options for disabled children was my cry yesterday, as it remains my cry today and my rage tomorrow. Es el tiempo de afirmar un mandato para el uso de las mascarillas ahora y implementar opciones digitales para los niños discapacitados que se encuentran en sus casas, como mi hijo, like my child who is at home at this time. If you need to not have a mask on, that's fine. Just get a medical excuse, and that should be all. Your doctor, your family doctor should be able to take care of that. I mean, after all, we are only talking about the health and safety of our children and families. It's not like we are diving into the topic of the cracker origins of Florida and how the term cracker still hangs over the heads of many in our community as an unresolved and undiscussed dark cloud. But that is not here, nor there, and for another board, not yours. And not the firm mask mandate for our schools now. I find nothing wrong with anyone requesting to be excused medically with proof. I thank you all, and I hope you make the wise choice, and I hope that you have thought with discernment of your decision. I thank you all.
Is there other people speaking while people are at their, at
Yes, I have, we've tried to let everybody express their viewpoints. We know they're very, very different in here today. But please, we're trying not to interrupt anybody, and please give them, no matter which viewpoint, the respect they deserve and that you deserve. So, Ms. Fitzgibbons, give us your name.
My name is
and
Timmy
address for the record.
Fitzgibbon from Kissimmee, Florida. I'm going to speak on behalf of my daughter. I've homeschooled for many years. She wanted to come back to school because she missed the social, she missed the activity, she missed the sports. So I said, fine. We went into school this year. And now the mask mandates come in. That's not fair to her. She shouldn't have to be masked. I shouldn't have to opt out with a medical paper saying she won't have to wear a mask. That's my choice as a parent, if I want her to have a mask on or not. My whole family, I don't know if you guys all had COVID. My whole family has had COVID, except my 9-year-old. My 9-year-old, out of 4 of us, did not catch COVID. I don't live in a $200,000 big old home. We were confined in a small space. My 9-year-old didn't catch COVID. So putting these kids in a mask 8 hours a day is so wrong, and it is child abuse. So wrong. And now I gotta tell my girl, you might not go to school this year. She was heartbroken, she's pissed, and I don't know what else to do for her because she has to wear a mask. If you're that afraid, go to virtual school. You know what? Homeschool. I'm not sending her in a mask. I will pull her out of school and I'll continue to homeschool like I did years before. I'm not doing it. It's not healthy. I'm the person that looks out for her health, not you guys, not the government. The government is doing way worse for us nowadays. So putting the mask on these little guys and taking away all their social skills, and it's just so wrong, so wrong. You know, everyone in there goes out to a restaurant. What do? You go in with your mask on, you sit at the table, what do? You take it off. Now, if you're that afraid of COVID, exactly. Why are you going out in public? Why are you going out in public?
You have one person
Corona,
speaking, please.
the virus, is so teeny-weeny. The gaps in your guys' masks is going straight through. It's not protecting a darn one of us. But why are we wearing it? Why? Because we're feared, and the government is fearing every one of us. Because we have to wear it. There's monoclonal stations that the great Governor DeSantis has provided his people to get treatment when we get COVID. There is vitamin D, B12, zinc, C, whatever. You don't hear nobody saying that. Nobody's telling us what we should do. Oh, go get the vaccine. Like the vaccines ain't good? That's killing people. That's putting blood clots in people. That vaccine is evil. The government is evil. Ivermectin? What other, hydroxychloroquine?
There's one person speaking. Ms. Fitzgibbons, your 3 minutes is up.
That's great, because I said everything I wanted to say.
Next up, Jeanette Wise will be followed by Mark Cavell. Ms. Wise, give us your name and address, please. And
Yes, thank you. Jeanette Wise, Pine Gate Trail, Orlando. America's fallen into a cycle. People literally think there is no care plan or cure for COVID due to the information block that has unexplainably taken place. You cannot beat natural immunity of COVID recovery, proven to be complete and durable. You cannot vaccinate on top of that and make it better. You cannot find asymptomatic spread. It does not exist. If the focus was on the sick patient, which has actually been the case before COVID, it didn't take the path that Fauci, the CDC, and the government had led us. Not masks and vaccines and social distances. The preventable fraction would have been reduced by 85%. Please let that sink in. People have placed a false sense of security on masks. People like to be able to see people doing something. Sorry, but implementing these protocols is simply an action to manage the fear. It has nothing to do with the actual health of our children, nor any representatives working or volunteering on our school campuses. If it were about health, then why not focus on handing out the proper prophylactic care for vitamin D3 and zinc with the same fervor of promoting a vaccine that should never have been for all, never mind our children. The CDC has been funded over $750 million for an ad campaign to promote this vaccine, which has clearly been effective. Notice that the manufacturers are not actually advertising directly, otherwise the possible side effects would need to be listed as well. They are circumventing this requirement by having the CDC do their advertising. Society has been listening to this one-sided representation of information via all of the mainstream media outlets. And what about the $2.3 billion in criminal fines against Pfizer for other drugs that were falsely advertised and were approved by the FDA, and the paying of the kickbacks to government healthcare programs? Each of those vaccine manufacturers have all been sued for their products that were brought to market that they knew would result in injuries and death. Recent reporting demonstrates that the vax actually creates negative efficacy. The vax is designed to prevent a specific variant. Once a mutation comes along, the original vax has no longer recognition. It is as if there is now a whole new virus. Because of this, so you experience more severe symptoms, and the science shows that the vax will actually have more hospitalizations. Make all the necessary steps to stop any mask mandates. Do not then shift or escalate to any sort of mandatory vaccine. With a 99.97 plus survival rate, we need to legitimately return to normal. Many are waiting for somebody else to step up and do the right thing. You are those people in this case. Return to treating us as the healthy people as a whole we genuinely are. Reground us in common sense and logic. Please stop creating solutions for problems that don't exist. Stop being afraid of what could go wrong, and start being excited about what could go right. Thank you.
Next up is Mark Cavell. Mr. Cavell, 3 minutes, please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Is there a way that I can just ask one question with one answer with the hand raised for the council, or for the board here?
You mean in the audience? Yeah.
No, for all of you, yeah, just one quick hand raise regarding
just
who I'm speaking to.
We want to hear your comments first, and we'll deal with that later.
Okay, all right, it was not an insulting question. I apologize for that. It made it sound like that. I guess I want to preface this first by saying that I have no political agenda here. In fact, I am a non-party affiliation registered voter here in Florida. And to that, I'm also a father of a student here. And I would hope, now some people I did hear tonight, I did not hear them give their address, which I am here at the 2000 block of Heritage Key Boulevard in Kissimmee. And I did not hear some of the speakers, a lady with a Nassau shirt in particular, give a lot of information. And I just want to make sure that in this meeting or any meeting hereafter, hopefully this board takes into consideration that people speaking here, probably most prominent with the information would be that they are parents or grandparents of students going to this district. Because this information about the mask mandate is going to affect them and their loved ones more than anyone else. So my concern just on that is that there has been much information out there that there are outside parties, groups, lobbyists, if you may, that are infiltrating the board meetings like this in Florida that have leftist ideology, and they are trying to disrupt some of these meetings. So just hopefully you all look pretty intelligent, and hopefully that information or those people aren't allowed to speak in these meetings. To that, yeah, I've heard keep open mind, common sense. That's pretty much what this is about. This is about a mask mandate. And it's about us as parents getting what we feel best is for our kids. From the moment my son was born, I had to make decisions on him. And the passion, excuse me, the passion here is that he is my kid to make that best decision. I feel for the doctors and the experts who we have on here, the hospitals are becoming overwhelmed, and the nurses, and bless their hearts for doing the job they do. And all of you who know teachers or friends or relatives from every one of you, or councilman that you may be person that represents everybody from all backgrounds as well, I'm sure, just as my nephew as an attorney does. And here's the thing, it is about common sense. We have a virus out there, and it's turned to a variant, and people are going to get sick. And unfortunately, it's very naive for anyone to think, and yet I've never heard one expert from doctors, immunologists, who have said a cloth mask is going to 100% keep this virus out of our bodies. It does help, yes. I've talked to many doctors, my pediatrician for my son, and all these doctors have all agreed it's the best we have. In fact, I talked to the principal at the school. That's what we have to work with.
Time is up, go ahead and wrap
I'm up already?
Yep.
Thank you for your time. Just keep an open mind. If I may just wrap it up, I apologize for that. We don't have to follow what Big Brother up in Orange County does. You guys all look pretty intelligent. I think you can make the best decision. You have to listen to all the information and not be swayed by political agenda and not be swayed by programs and news outlets that you listen to that may sway your decision. So from NPR radio, which I listen to Fox News information, I listen to it all. I want to take it all in. And I'm sure all of you with some education background would do the same. Thank you for your time.
Board and staff, Dr. Pace, it's 7:18 or so. We've got a good many more left. Would y'all like to take a 5-minute health recess, or y'all good to go? Tell me what's your pleasure.
I'm good. How many more do
Sure.
you have?
Let's go. Got another 15 or so. Okay, next up would be, everybody good?
Yeah.
Next up will be Vanessa Bryant. Ms. Bryant will be followed by Christian Sanchez. Can you get it down there?
I don't know if you can hear me or not. Can you hear me?
It's pretty dim. You can just speak up just a little bit.
My name's Vanessa Bryant. I'm from 590 Cody Allen Court in St. Cloud. I wanted to speak tonight. I really didn't come with a speech, but I came 2 weeks ago, and I listened to hysterical people and it broke my heart to think that people are so afraid of this virus and the mask, wearing it, not wearing it, that they would actually accuse you or point a finger that you're responsible for the death of their loved ones. Okay, I don't choose to wear a mask, that's my choice. I did when it was mandated by the governor, I did that. But I haven't had one on since, and I don't believe they work. I've talked to doctors, I have doctors that have told me they don't believe it works. So there's a lot of things going on, but one thing I'm not, is I'm caring about other people. But I'm not gonna wear a mask so you'll feel better. That doesn't change anything. If that, just like she said, I go out to eat a lot, okay? So when I go in, I'm walking, I sit down, take the mask off for 2 hours. That virus doesn't stay back there behind my chair for 2 hours. And then when I get up and put it on, it follows me out. And this, we've lost our common sense of thinking because of fear. I've taught here for 35 years and I retired 3 years ago. And I didn't retire because I didn't love children. I did always the best for my children. But I would never, ever mandate to put a mask on my students. They need to see my face. They need to see you talk. That's how they learn to read. That's how they learn to see emotion. I mean, programs are great, but there is no substitute for a child being with you and having you and tell them to go over here, stay 6 feet away from me. I would never do that. I never did. My kids had the flu, they came in with everything. I ended up getting it. Nobody made them go home. Nobody made me wear a mask. You don't quarantine healthy people. And we're doing bad things to our children by that. And I know people disagree with me, and that's your right to disagree with me. But I had a meeting with Ms. Pace and Mr. Bass a couple of weeks ago. Wasn't necessarily on the mask, so that's another topic for another time. But what I did say is that we are the watchmen on the wall for our children. And that's a scripture verse. God keeps putting that on me. You are the watchmen on the wall for our children in this county. Their parents bring them into your classroom and they trust parents to do what's right, teachers to do what's right, and that trust is being broken. And if you don't do what's right, not what Channel 9 says or whatever says, I don't care what Orange County does. I don't. I care that you take true leadership and do the research. The Moores, I don't mean any disrespect from them, okay, they're doctors, but they're turning away patients who refuse to get a vaccine. Yes. There's something wrong with that, because doctors, I know my time is up, Mr. Thacker, and I'll respect that, but what I want to say is, make a decision based on what is right, not what is popular, okay? You don't turn children away and you don't do those things to them. Teach them and educate them and love them and work with their parents. If you're afraid, that's you. Put a mask on your child, but don't tell me what I need to do for my child or my grandchild. That's not right. So I thank
you. Christian Sanchez, followed by Christy Flanagan. Pardon? Did I say it right? Mr. Sanchez, 3 minutes.
Christian Sanchez, address redacted. Thank you for your time. Thank you, John. Staring at Osceola here, I can't help but think that he'd be turning in his grave, but he does have one thing in common with a lot of you here wearing masks. You lost your head. Now, here are the facts. We have a Parents' Bill of Rights here in the state of Florida. If you violate that with any kind of mandate, you're in violation of that Bill of Rights, and we will hold you accountable. Trying to impose any vaccine on a child, or anyone for that matter, teacher, anyone, staff member, you are in violation of the Nuremberg Code. The punishment for violating the Nuremberg Code is death. We killed a lot of Nazis for violating that code. Now, I don't like calling people Nazis because that's very heavy. But if you look like one, you smell like one, you're a Nazi.
Please, that's enough of that. That's not acceptable.
I'm exercising my First Amendment, sir. Now I want to go over, of course the masks are garbage. The virus is way smaller than any cloth. Even N95, it has little vents on the side. There's no way to completely fill any gap. If it's out there, you're going to get it. But what you are doing is breathing in your own waste, your own carbon dioxide, and it can cause bacterial pneumonia. These kids aren't, following the protocol. Hell, even adults aren't following the protocol. I see all of you fiddling with your masks. That's what Dr. Fauci was saying in the very beginning, and he said ever since. It's in the emails. If you fiddle with the mask, you have to take it off and get a new one. That's sterile. Now, I'm going to spend the rest of my time, 1 minute and 20 seconds, going over the VAERS database up to date. For the vaccines in the U.S., we have 13,068 deaths, 54,142 hospitalizations, 72,699 urgent care visits, 98,761 office visits, 5,617 cases of anaphylaxis, 4,681 cases of Bell's palsy, 1,607 miscarriages on record, 5,882 heart attacks, 4,861 cases of myocarditis and pericarditis, 17,228 cases of people that have now been considered permanently disabled, 2,738 cases of thrombocytopenia or a low platelet count, 13,812 life-threatening cases of different varieties, 25,169 severe allergic reactions, 7,080 cases of shingles, and that's just up to date. As far as the Delta variant is concerned, I find it very interesting that a bunch of people got vaccinated, and now that we have this Delta variant, when all of these things, that's my time, so I won't do what others did. Thank you very much for your time.
Next up after this will be Mark Brinks. Be ready, please.
My name is Dr. Christy Flanagan-Fedden. My address is 1106 Banks Rose Court, 34747. First of all, I'd like to thank those who voted in support of our current mask requirements in the previous meeting. We made a decision that was consistent with the advice of healthcare experts and in the best interest of our community. We are all aware of the court's recent decision to block the executive order banning mask mandates based on its constitutionality. And this puts the authority back in local school districts to make these decisions based on the interests of our community. In light of this, I'm here to respectfully ask them to go further and make these requirements mandatory and keep this into effect for a period of longer than 30 days. And Mr. Osceola, I want to thank you for your excellent suggestion to require N95 masks. I think that's a great point. My request is based on three main principles. The first is based on the advice of medical and healthcare experts. Both the CDC and the AAP, further reiterated by the Florida chapter based on current conditions, call for the required use of masks in school settings for everyone over the age of 2 and regardless of vaccination status. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence that states that masks are effective in reducing the spread of disease, including COVID. Another study was recently published by UCF. I'm happy to provide it upon request. Those who say that there is no evidence are choosing to ignore the evidence. We also have clear indications that our local hospitals are overburdened as a result of COVID-19. Last week alone, our ICU beds in the state are at 95% capacity. 15,000 people in the state were hospitalized due to COVID. And we're seeing a rising number of pediatric hospitalizations. This idea of emphasizing the fatality and the survival rate is a false sense of hope. There were 41 children hospitalized in Central Florida last week, and I'd like to ask everyone how you feel if your child was one of those 41. This is a healthcare crisis, and we need to act accordingly. The second principle is based on the concept of freedom. There's been a lot of discussion about the refusal to wear masks based on personal freedom. I'm here to assert my freedom. The court decision also cited the legal precedent that explains that individual freedom ends when it infringes on the rights of others. This is not only a legal principle, but it is a moral principle, and is based in a general sense of the common good. I have the freedom to send my children to our public school with reasonable assurance that they will be safe, and that there will be enough faculty and staff who are healthy enough to teach them. I have the freedom to expect that my friends who work in the district are going to be able to do so under safe working conditions. And I have the freedom to expect that my local schools are not COVID super spreaders in my community. Forbes published last week that 60% of Floridians support mask requirements in schools for students and staff, as well as vaccination requirements. And I have the freedom to ensure that our voice is heard. The third principle is simply an appeal to common sense and practical experience. Last year, we began the school year with great uncertainty, but by all accounts, it was a successful year with very few shutdowns. Last week, Celebration K-8 was closed to in-person instruction after 9 days of school.
Ms. Fenton, you're 3 minutes up.
We've seen skyrocketing numbers throughout the state. The difference is the lack of the mask mandate. Respectfully, I ask you to reinstate the mask requirements for everyone, and please to do the right thing for our community. Thank you very much.
Mark Briggs, will be followed by Kevin Parker, if you could be ready, please. Just a minute. Mr. Briggs?
Yes, my name is Mark Brinks. I'm from Kissimmee.
Can you give us your address, too, for the record?
No, I'm not giving you my address.
Is it protected, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's fine.
There's a study, and this is the only one I'm going to use, 67 school districts last year, 40 of them in Florida. 40 of them had mandates, 27 didn't. The difference in COVID cases between the two was less than 0.5%. Look around this room right now. What do you see? You see people in masks, you see people without masks. You know what's great about that? They have the right to do that. This is America.
That's right.
If you want to wear a mask, you can. I support that fully.
Excuse me. Please let
If you don't want to wear a mask, obviously I support that because I don't. But that's what's great about America. You should have the choice to do it. It shouldn't be one side or the other. And the same thing goes for the science. Everybody's throwing out this science and saying, well, especially the side that wants masks, saying, well, this is the science, you have to obey it. There's just as much science on the other side that says that masks don't work, that mandates don't work. Oh, but we ignore that. Is that right? Is just one side's science correct and the other's isn't? This has become a political issue, and it has to stop. You're pushing people and pushing them and pushing them. And they're finally going to start fighting back. We're tired of it. I love the school I put my daughter in. I'm pulling her out if you put this mask mandate in. And you know what? I'm going around and I'm going to make sure I'll find all the other parents who want to do the same, and we'll organize, and we'll pull them out. Because the Hope Scholarship is there for that. And we'll move them to other schools, private schools probably, and guess what will happen? You'll lose money. Your job is to teach these kids. Teachers, is job. Your job is to make sure the school district has the money for that. They're not going to have as much money if you put in this mask mandate. Is that helping the kids? Really? I mean, this has just gotten out of hand. I hope some of you have seen what's going on in Australia.
Yeah.
That is scary. And you start with just having a mask mandate. What's next? The vaccine mandate?
Yeah.
Is that next? Because the government keeps on taking more and more freedoms from you. I'm not putting up with it anymore, and I don't think a lot of other people are.
Excuse me.
Keep on poking at the
Bruce, could you stop for a second? Y'all been really good for a long time. I don't know why all of a sudden we won't let him finish. We can't hear when you do that, and we're very interested in what Mr. Brinks, as we are with what each one of you have to say. So please, let Mr. Brinks finish. Mr. Brinks, you've got another 15, 20 seconds or so.
You keep poking the bear, and we're going to fight back. We're not going to take this anymore. We love, and most of the people who support not wearing a mask, they love Osceola County schools. There's a reason they put their kids in there. But we'll pull them out in a heartbeat if you put this mask mandate in. And I swear I will lead the charge if I need to.
I believe your time.
Thank you.
Next up is Kevin Parker, followed by Chelsea Mangum. Mr. Parker, give us your name. I see your address is protected, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening, board. First, I'd like to thank you all for being swift and calling an emergency meeting to discuss this. I'm going to keep this brief because I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of hearing the mindless dribble. So where do we go from here? Right? There's no laws to hide behind. There's no government directives. What do we do from here? Where do we go from here? This is not a political issue as it's being made out to be. This is about the health and well-being of our community, the health and well-being of our students, of our teachers, and our staff. We can't keep going back and forth about this. This is about safety. This is about lives. Don't listen to this. You all see the data every day. Every day, your Orlando Sentinel comes out with another report. Advent Health put out a statement. Now, they're not asking for help yet, but they were saying we have a serious problem. We are running out of room to put bodies. They're having to call refrigerated units, and those are starting to get filled up. So what do? We've got to do our part. You guys have to do your part to help keep this count down, to get back to where we can go out and be safe. We can't do that if we're still letting our kids run around rampant without masks, bringing home disease to their family members, bringing home the disease to people who can't get the vaccine. Y'all, it's not hard. Do the right thing. And I know that you guys know that a mask mandate for public schools is the right thing to do. Before I end, I have a statement by Debbie Gale. She's the former DEC chair of Osceola County, and she's the current state committee woman. I'm writing to express my deep concern for the safety of our teachers, school staff, and especially our youngest school children who are not eligible for protection with the COVID vaccine. Our job, and yours, is to put the health and safety of our children first. Scientific evidence shows that vaccines, masks, social distancing, and sanitation measures are the best defenses for reducing the spread of this potentially deadly virus. Florida remains the nation's hotspot for COVID cases and hospitalizations. U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, implored school districts on Friday to follow the agency's recommendations that students and staff wear masks and get vaccinated against the coronavirus if they're eligible. After CDC outbreak investigations showed a higher rate of COVID-19 cases linked to schools that did not follow the agency's guidelines. The CDC recommends students over the age of 2, staff, teachers, and school visitors all wear a mask.
Parker, your time is up. You get it.
Can I just close with her ending paragraph?
No, with the last sentence or so. We gotta go.
I respectfully request that the Osceola County school system implement a mask mandate without the opt-out option immediately to protect our children. Thank you. You're all welcome to be pictures. Y'all know
Please, Mr. Parker, everybody. Mr. Parker, Mr. Sanchez, please. That is completely. Ms. Mangum.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Mangum. I'm at 4511 Salt Avenue South. You heard me talk last week, or last one. So when I come home, I have to put on a smile. I have 2 little kids. I can't come home and tell them every day I've had people die. Every day, my mom calls me and says, "How's your day?" On my way home, I said, "Oh, I have another patient dead." Every day this has happened. Friday was the first day I got to call my mom and say, "Mom, it was a good day. Nobody died today." That shouldn't be life. That really should not be life. And that is here in Osceola County, here in our home. So the biggest thing is with that.
Excuse me, could y'all please allow her to speak, please, without interrupting her? Ms. Mangum, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So the biggest thing with that is when I drop my son off at school, he knows to wear his mask. Yes, he has an N95 mask because I want to protect my child. Yes, I found it, I researched it, I searched and sought it out. But you know what? I also called his teacher and I said, "Hey, can you put my child in the pod with other childs with masks? Because I don't want them to expose my child. For me to have to spend my time trying to keep my child safe from other kids who their parents don't want them to wear masks. They're 5 years old, they don't know the difference. They don't understand. They don't get the grasp of it. And neither does he. He just knows if he wears it 5 days a week, he gets a surprise at the end of the week. That's what he knows, because I don't want to instill that fear in him that I have myself. We don't go to restaurants. We don't do all that. But that's because I have patients every day dying. And so when I see that every single day, when I see that it could be one of you guys every day that's trying to protect and serve our community, which I know my patients, they are, it's hard. It's hitting Osceola hard. And the fact is, we need something. The teachers need to be masked, even if they have the vaccine. I don't want my child sitting right next to the teacher. I don't feel comfortable with it. The kids, I would like them to be masked. I understand the choice of everybody. I understand that this is whole political stuff, but it's not political. It's health, it's safety, it's people dying left and right. I had a 28-year-old die. It's not fair. He hasn't lived his life. He served our community, he served our country. It's not fair. And if we have kids dying too, that's not fair either. So I'm just asking, teachers wear a mask, staff wear a mask. If you don't want to do the children wearing a mask and you want to do the opt, fine. But the adults are the ones spreading it majorly, as we've seen. So please focus on that too.
Ms. Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Elijah Skillmore, I believe. He's gone. Elijah?
No, sir.
Okay. Next has one name on here, Brandon. Is there a Brandon still here? Brandon from St. Cloud is all the information I have. Okay. Megan Carter? Okay. Mike Kepner? Oh, I'm sorry, Megan Carter. I apologize. I'm very sorry. I didn't see you stand.
I'm not offended. I'm not gonna spend too much time up here because I come here every meeting and you guys already know what I think. I would maybe recommend looking at, policies for, audience respect. Something I really wanna add. I was nice and quiet for everyone. Yeah. I do want to let you know Shannon Liberto, she is a mom who was here last week. She wanted me to let you guys know that, that she had to pull her kids out of school because of people not masking, and her kids are sick right now. I hope that you'll implement masks for all teachers, students, and staff to keep community transmission low as best we can. This is our #1 safety measure that we can do in schools, and I really encourage everyone to take the safety not just of our students and our teachers and our staff, but also the community at large who live in the same house or work in the same places. I also have 20 letters to submit in favor of masks from people in the community. So who can I give these to?
Give those to Ms. Culver right here.
All right, that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Mike Kepner, I'm sorry. Again, following Mr. Kepner, Joan De Alessandro, I believe.
Very close. I've had much worse. Thank you. I appreciate
Thank
it.
Thank you. Mr. Kepner.
Thank you, sir. Mike Kepner, 3318 Pond Pine, Harmony, Florida. First, Mr. Thacker, Board, Dr. Pace, thank you all so much for maybe prematurely putting together an emergency meeting, but for at least hearing the voices of the parents that are out here. I want to start by reminding everybody of something. This is about the education of our children. It's the mission, the vision, and the purpose of the School District of Osceola County to inspire learners who are responsible and productive citizens. Citizens of a nation that are governed by laws. Laws. We heard our attorney say earlier tonight, when this whole thing first started, the mask mandate, which really isn't a mandate if there's an opt-out policy, is still in flux in the courts. But what's not in flux is we do have a parental bill of rights that implores you as a school board to listen to, work with, and consult with parents to govern what happens with our students. And there's a lot of folks out here tonight with emotions on both sides of it, and I get it. I'm all about it. I won't get emotional, I'll just talk with facts. This is not about politics. And I pray and beg that we don't catch out of politicians from whatever level who are sending in letters and everything else. Listen to your parents. Listen to the kids. We've heard people stand up here tonight and talk about the kids. I've got a kid in Harmony Middle School. I will tell you, last year was the most difficult year he's ever had of learning. He was successful. He made great grades. But that's because that's his character. There are children that are suffering out there because of masks and are suffering because they're afraid to go to school. Don't change it. You have passed a policy. You've already passed it. It's good until October 4th. It's got an opt-out clause. People who want to put their children in masks, they have that right. But allow me to have the right as a parent, defined as a person who has legal custody of a child. Allow me to have the right as a parent to decide what is best for my child. Because I know where he stands. I know that when the decision is made, that kid he'll tear up if he has to. But again, don't make him as a 13-year-old make that decision. Because if he's truly a productive citizen of society, he'll boycott, he'll protest. And he'll do what I did when I was 16 years old and my high school teachers went on strike, and he'll stand out front with a picket sign. And I end it with this. If we go down this road, if an offensive and defensive lineman can stand across from each other for 3 hours and hit each other with no mask on, I ask you to consider other options. Give kids some sort of relaxation station where they can take a mask off the same way everyone on the dais has tonight. Give them a chance to breathe. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for coming out, because I'm not gonna try it again.
It's okay. I mean, I don't know if it's the length of the name or my horrible handwriting, so please, it's quite all right. Wow, this is pretty heated. I wasn't sure what to expect. This is my first meeting, so it's very nice to see and meet all of you. I feel strongly that it's very important to protect all kids, but I kind of feel a little bit like, it's been implied that if you're not for the mask mandate, you don't care about protection. I think it's worth, taking a moment to say that I think that everyone here, while our opinions vary wildly, right? Everyone here is here for the same reason. Everyone wants to do what they think is best for their kids. We just all have different ways that we think that gets done. Every scenario in life has costs and benefits, and I think both sides of that equation need to be defined here in ways that are measurable, shareable, and able to be cross-examined. I've heard some districts enforce the mask mandate out of an abundance of caution. And with all due respect to those fine folks, I think that's a bit of a cop-out. If kids need to show their work at school in math class to get full credit for a problem, I think it only is right that the powers that be show their work in concluding how they arrived at a mandate that forces all kids to wear masks every day, regardless of that kid's set of circumstances and his parents' wishes. Up to this point, no one's really been able to define clearly the benefit of wearing a mask. I know people say, it's helpful, but at the end of the day, if you truly could define it, you would. You would define it with a number. You'd be very specific. I think also a lot of people have very different masks on, and no one has recommended a specific mask over another. And I think if you can't define which mask is better and which mask is worse, then you can't define that they work at all. Because if those numbers truly existed, you should be able to tell me, well, listen, we're going to define it and make sure that we think that the surgical mask is best. We think that the cloth mask is second best. If you don't have that level of detail to make a recommendation as to which is better and which is worse, you don't have enough detail to say that it's a good thing at all. I often hear people say it's just a mask. And that statement seems to imply that there's no cost or downside to wearing one, and I think that there absolutely is. And I think that this district has a responsibility to manage and evaluate and understand those costs. You know, masks increase the amount of carbon dioxide in that dead space by up to 25%. So I would pose the question to you, if you're gonna force kids to wear the mask, what is the level of carbon dioxide in that mask that's acceptable? You need to establish what that is. And then secondly, how are you gonna measure that? You're gonna test kids for COVID every day. Are you gonna measure the amount of carbon dioxide in that mask every day? And what is the level? You have to set the level. And then additionally, if a child meets that level, what's the protocol? What do? We can't ignore these costs because they're inconvenient. I'm getting low on time here. I tend to ramble. I'd like to go on for another 30 minutes or so, but I guess, like every child needs something different. You know, the idea of one size fits all, it sounds great, but I think in reality, in life, it tends to be one size tends to fit none. And, you know, I support everyone taking whatever step they deem appropriate to protect their child. You know, all I'm asking for is the same courtesy in return. So I appreciate you all being here. This is my first meeting. It was hard to get here. You're here all the time. I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Next up, Zevchik. Not Kara Zevchik, I believe. And next will be Jordan Johnson.
Let me get my stuff.
Good, get your
Hello,
stuff ready.
everyone.
No, you good?
I'm Kara. I'm speaking today as a concerned parent. I'm from Celebration, and we have 74 children that have tested positive for COVID, and we have 300 in quarantine currently. Our school has already lost a beloved member of the faculty. This was before the science knew about mask safety. I don't want to lose any others after we know that it works. We did it close down for a few days to reset, so the kids were back to school today. But we live in Florida. In a perfect world, nearly everyone would be vaccinated, and we wouldn't have this problem. Unfortunately, we do. And in Florida, we are averaging about 250 deaths a day. We are the third highest in the entire country right now. Unfortunately, children under 12 cannot get the vaccine and are very high transmitters. 22 to 25% of all new infections are children. 400 children have died in the United States, but even one is too many. My child cannot stay home and learn. She was depressed because I forced her to homeschool for half the year last year. Oh, it was really tough, let me tell you. I had to do it to protect her father, who is very high risk, and her grandparents from COVID. When I finally let her go back, and she said that she would rather go back to school every day and wear a mask than stay home. I do not want my school to close down again. There's absolutely no data that states that masking kids affects their psychology. There are a few minor papers written, but nothing peer-reviewed. More studies find that kids are resilient and adaptable. You know what did affect her mental health? Was watching Mr. Wong die from COVID. Ultimately, children adhere to rules and follow their parents' examples and actions. You tell a child to wear pants, they wear pants. You explain to them the benefits of wearing a mask to help protect their friends and families, and they are happy to do it. She knows that when she wears a mask, she is protecting others, and I would hope others wear one to protect her. Children are born with a natural compassion and understand quickly. However, it takes years of learning hate. And looking around this room and the complete disregard for others, it saddens me greatly. Masks work best with every single student wearing one. Help us protect our children. The science says masks work. In fact, they are recommended in schools by the CDC, the WHO, and also the National Institute of Health. Let's listen to the people who do this for a living, the entire science community. In fact, 99% is in agreement that masks help stop the spread. And with the Delta variant being even more transmissible,
It is more important than ever.
Mrs. Evchik, your 3 minutes up if you would, wrap up.
Please protect our kids, protect our teachers. Even one more child's death is way too many.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Jordan Johnson. Mr. Johnson, give us your name and address for the record in 3 minutes, please, sir.
Can you please repeat? Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Can you repeat?
Give us your name and address for the record.
Of course. Jordan Johnson.
Are you a student?
Former student.
Okay, no, if you're an adult, you can give address for the record, you have 3 minutes, Mr.
Of course. Hi, my name is Jordan Johnson, 403 Hayden Road, Tallahassee, resident here. I am a graduate of the 2017 Osceola County School for the Arts class. I would like to take my 3 minutes as a moment of silence, actually, in honor of Daniel Joyner, the Dean of Students at Osceola High School, who was exposed to COVID while he was working at Osceola High School, told he did not need to get tested because he was there and your policies, and started to not feel well, proceeded to test positive on his own accord, and passed away yesterday. He leaves a wife, Sarah, and a son, Kelly, who is 3, and Daniel was a mere 36 years old. So.
Mr. Johnson, thank you.
Thank you for your time. Rest in peace, Daniel Joyner.
That is all I have. From,
I'd like to say one more thing.
if you could make it pretty quick, we don't generally go back, but we'll let you go back.
Last year in 2020, my name is Arabella Morgenstern. Last year in 2020, when I went to my new school, for a couple of months, there was no signs of COVID. And then a couple months later, my teacher, Mr. Pearl, she had gotten COVID. I sat right next to her in the front to pay attention, and so I wouldn't get distracted by anything. So she had COVID, and she didn't know, and I was sitting next to her. The next thing I know, our principal comes in and tells us that that one person in our class had COVID. None of us knew, but there were some kids absent, so we didn't know. But at first we didn't know, but when we went, so we had to go to the virtual to virtual. And then we were trying to figure it out, but when we were doing a Zoom meeting, our teacher told us that she had COVID. But when she had COVID and I was in my classroom, I didn't catch it.
Thank you, very good. Thank you. Maybe a nice ending to this.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we will close the public comment portion of the meeting, and we will turn it back over to the board for our discussion. Mr. O'Leary, your light's on.
Yeah, I want to apologize for my emotion earlier. It's just, I'm extremely offended when anyone, I don't care what their credentials are or where they come from, can make a relation between what my actions are and the level of love that I have for my own kids. Anybody that can dare tell me that if I don't do what they think is right for my family, that I don't love my kids, it gets personal. That's personal. That's a personal thing for me, very personal thing. I have 5 kids. I love them all very much. And anything that Dr. Alexander said after that, I could barely listen to it, to be honest, and will never understand the logic. To me, it means that that man has very little interest in the health of our kids and a lot of care about what the sound of his own voice. Here's the thing. It's not only Dr. Alexander that doesn't know what's best for our family. Sometimes it's the people behind this dais. Okay, the fact is, we just saw a bunch of speakers come up here, touch that podium, touch their face, touch their mask, touch that podium, get extremely close to that microphone, whether they were for or against masks, but they had little fear. COVID does not know whether you're speaking at a school board meeting or whether you're in a room full of diseased people, but no one had the fear to come up there. In fact, some people, our superintendent, at the very beginning of the meeting, removed her mask to speak to the crowd here so that she can be heard. And I'm not throwing fault, I'm just saying that happens, right? We saw that happen. If, and I'm gonna make this relation, and at least one person on this board will know what this is like. If you believed your life was at stake, you wouldn't remove your mask so that your voice can be heard. And I know this because on a battlefield in Afghanistan, never once did I consider removing my armor plate from my heart so that I could feel less heat or less weight. I wore it because I was refusing to allow myself to have a lapse of judgment that involved my life. And I agree, or I believe that most people are like that. You don't take the things that save your life when you know it saves your life. And if it does save your life, then the people who are leaders in this community, whether they be doctors, whether they be a school board member, whatever their role, they've done a terrible job communicating and proving to us that that saves lives. Otherwise, it wouldn't be up for argument. The CDC recently released a study that showed that there was no statistical difference between masked schools and unmasked schools. That's the science. If everybody's referring to the CDC and we cannot pick and choose what we use, that's what the CDC put out extremely recently, okay? Using the logic that we've heard today about masks and forcing masks upon people or upon children and saying that only masks across every person makes a difference, then let's make double masking or triple masking optional. If that's the case, then instead of masking my child or masking someone else's child who doesn't want their child to be masked, then we should allow people to put on 3 or 4 masks. And that should override, according to the logic that we're using, any one person's lack of a mask. MIT also did a recent study that proved that 6 feet of social distancing is the same as 60 feet of social distancing because of the industrial air systems. Well, science can be wrong, right? Because at first we social distanced, now we're not. Is that no longer the case? Well, when do we decide when that fact is important or not? And if the fact that somebody can get up there and not be understood because they have a mask on, or our superintendent can't be understood when she has her mask on, then how can we expect our students to learn if their teachers are masked? If they're masked, how are they gonna learn? That's our mission. If our speakers can't be heard by an audience with all of this equipment, how are our kids gonna be heard? How are our kids gonna learn? Kids are being terrorized by irrational adult behavior. And I'm not talking about the people who just have fear here about the disease and how they've been impacted. I completely empathize with that. One of those persons was a friend of mine, and her and I are on opposite ends of the world when it comes to masks. But you know what? I'm not gonna fight with her. I'm gonna have compassion for her. I'm gonna listen to what her opinions are, and I will respect her. And if I walk into her home, sure as hell, I'm gonna wear a mask. Because I wouldn't do that to somebody that I care about. And the fact is, we're charged here with taking care of our community, not ourselves. If we continue to teach our kids this level of fear, it will impact them for the rest of their lives. It will far outweigh the impacts of the disease. We need to continue to teach our kids to display the characteristics that we want them to exhibit. And so far, these kids are overcome with fear, and I can't believe that any school board in any level of wisdom would do that to an entire population, a generation of students. Kids go without masks at home, and so do parents. The disease doesn't know whether you're at school or whether you're at home. And like people mentioned, we go to restaurants. But the disease only follows you at your table? How exactly does that work? It's a falsehood. The fact is, if 100 scientists can't come in here and prove to me that something exists, and they can't prove it to 40 or 50% of the community, chances are that's bunk science. Because when you know you're harmed by something, people avoid it. You know, people avoid it. People stop smoking. So we had a product which has been addictive for generations, and people smoked every single day. People were pregnant and smoking cigarettes. We don't do that anymore. Why? Because it has become consensus. We have acknowledged that smoking is bad for your health, and it's addictive. And you know what happened? In the beginning of cigarettes, people were talking about how great it was for your health. Not only should we not be mandating masks, but we also shouldn't be coercing our teachers to take health considerations based on what we want them to do. We should not be imposing our will on our teachers or our educational community to either take vaccines or anything else, and that has happened. And that should, in my opinion, is criminal.
Yes.
And for God's sakes, if we're going to have an emergency meeting, it should be about the state of education and the state of our educators, how they feel marginalized, not about masks. If we're willing to take masks, if you're willing to take your mask off to speak, obviously this is not a life-threatening issue. Nobody would come in here and sacrifice their lives to speak for or against masks. If any of you felt that you were in danger from my unmasked face, you would not have come in here and spoke. When somebody does not feel sufficiently scared of somebody else, when their opinion becomes more important than their health, it's not something that you need to be fearful of. And I'm just absolutely positively not going to be manipulated by the pressure of bringing anybody into this room or this extremely expensive show of theatrics of calling an emergency meeting before the legal issue is even squared away. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's enough. Please let us finish this discussion. I know it's getting late, and I'll just get. Ms. Castillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, everybody who stayed to talk about the issues. I know it's divisive, and I understand and empathize with you. But yes, I was the one who actually called for the vote last time to mandate masks, and I am positive I'm probably going to do it again. And not because I'm listening to Big Brother or because I'm listening to letters that are coming from people who don't live outside of Osceola County, but I'm listening to the people who live in Osceola County, who are parents of students who have been quarantined, who are parents of students who, may I speak? Just waiting. I have a little bit of a different experience, I think, than some of the other board members because I experienced the before time. So when masks were mandated at the beginning of the pandemic, we had a very, very low rate of infection for students. That was a fact. It's published. And I feel very strongly that we should probably mandate masks again for at least 60 days because our children are being infected at a higher rate than they were last year. I know it's unpopular and I'm okay with that. I love the fact that we have 5 board members and I love the fact that we have a community that is so eclectic and is able to respectfully have a discussion. So I love that. But that does not mean that I'm not going to state my opinion and I'm not going to state it strongly. I feel very strongly about the fact that we have to not only protect our students, but we have to protect our staff. We've had people in this very community pass away very recently, and I cannot in good conscience just ignore that because it happens to be unpopular today. So my opinion is, and I'm actually going to move, I know this is not what the meeting was called, I'm fully aware of that, but I am going to move that we do have a mask mandate for all students and staff for Osceola County.
It's a violation of the Bill of Rights. So you're gonna break the law? Are you gonna break the law? Is that what's gonna happen?
Please, we don't have to clear the room.
On your site on Facebook and have all the parents vote on their own. That is what would be fair.
Excuse me,
And see
ma'am.
who wins on public record. I'm sorry, let me speak because I pay your payroll. I pay tax dollars that pay your checks, and I'm
So do
sorry,
I.
you let me speak. Everybody should have the right to vote
Council.
and publicly so that parents can see the percentages go up and see who wins publicly so that every voter can see it. Because we have rights,
If we
and
need
then
to,
parents don't have rights, and you can have them here. I'm tired of people running my life. I get plenty of money of my own, and I will be running again. Mr. Bass, this election, you guys just got, I'm gonna have a lot of support from
Excuse me.
Let me say, I'm the lawyer, let me say, sure. Excuse me.
And we are having a discussion about this.
Yes,
we can all have.
found out about this emergency meeting.
Are we not-
Trying to get this thing done, while the rest of us have no clue this is happening. I'm working someone sent me.
Can we have a discussion and determine where we're going? You don't know.
We don't need schools. We can homeschool and homeschool our own kids. We don't need you guys in schools.
I'm assuming you're a Democrat. That means you believe in democracy. I believe we have more than 51% on the opposing side. That's it. We win, you lose. Bye.
Everybody needs to homeschool. It's not hard.
I think the gentleman, you are putting too much of your personal thoughts in this. You're not taking the community as a
I
whole.
apologize, guys. I think we were all very respectful when you
We
spoke.
won't. And this is the time for the board to discuss.
To be clear, I am one board member. Nothing has been decided. The board could decide not to even take into account what I said.
Good.
Excuse me, may I speak?
Excuse me.
Thank you so much for being respectful. As much as I agree that there's a lot of people here for or against a mask mandate, I have probably double that amount of people who are personally talking to me, who live in this district, not outside of this district, and who have given me their personal stories. And I also represent them. I absolutely care about your opinions, and I respect your opinions. I always have.
If they can't, someone should be here.
You have the perfect
Mr.
plan in
Chairman.
place right now. You have a choice, that's the way America is. You have a choice. You can wear a mask, you cannot wear a mask, you
Sir,
cannot
excuse me.
That's the perfect
Sir,
plan.
this is the board, Mr.
First of all, you're all adults. Let's all act like that and respect one another. They're only talking now, all right? A motion's been made from the parliamentarian. Mr. Chairman, you now ask, is there a second to the motion?
And I was waiting for a second before we couldn't get there. Is there a second to that motion?
What motion?
Just a minute. Will you let us do our business? Is there a second for the motion? The board, I believe, heard the motion. Is there a second? No, there is no second. That motion dies for lack of a second.
Don't do that again.
You
violated the law by even
No, I
considering
did
it.
not.
It's against the law.
Sir, could you ask him to leave the room?
It's against the law, what you just even considered. And I'm glad that you guys didn't violate the law. I'll leave on my own record.
Mr. Chairman, let me say one thing. If you read the court order, the judge specifically ruled. If you read the court order, the judge in Tallahassee specifically said the parents' Bill of Rights was not involved in this issue and was not set up to deal with this issue. He found it unconstitutional for a number of other reasons. So I don't want people to misstate and argue one way or the other. At this point, Mr. Chairman, unless there's a motion by somebody to do something, you then have the status quo as it currently exists.
Terry, Ms. Castillo, you done?
No, this is what a board does,
Okay.
deliberates.
Agreed.
Thank you.
That's why we're here.
Thank you, board.
That's why we're here. You done?
I am done, thank you.
Mr. Aguirre.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna call out School Board Member Castillo. We should not be using the death of one of our employees for political reasons here. To me, that is absolutely shameful, absolutely, you're calling out somebody who died for a discussion here, that has nothing, it's neither here nor there.
That's out of order, too.
That's not out of order, that was actually mentioned, she just did that, you don't use people's health issues outside of here to push your own agenda.
Are there any
It added absolutely nothing to your argument, and shame on you.
Board, at this point, we have an existing policy in place. Is there any kind of motion or anything that anybody would like to pursue, or do we remain at status quo at this point? Hearing nothing, I would assume it's status quo.
Yeah, the only thing I want to say, Mr. Chairman, because I'm the one that said that motion, the original intent was to wait for that. And then to have that discussion at the end of the 30 days, and then let the data speak from there. And I think that I want to change from there, unless, of course, the governor's order, which is going to have a right to appeal, gets exhausted. So until the governor's appeal gets exhausted completely, whether it's the Supreme Court or not, then I believe that it's the appropriate time to rediscuss this. Or at the end of the 30 days that we had originally stated, that we would then look at the data and only analyze the data that exists in Osceola County, not the data that's in Orange County or anywhere else. Let Osceola County school data tell us what direction to go from there.
Mr. Vance, are you good with that?
I'm good with that, yes, sir.
With that, we will remain where we are, and we will adjourn the board meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.